Day protest. You can also call the office at 443-660-7131. I am Ramona Jones McClain, and I am a farmer's agent in Reisterstown, Maryland. And we are getting back in the swing of things of being on air. And I have been talking about the election for the last 2 or 3 weeks. The hot topics, those things that are being reported are going to be deciding the election. There have been over 2,000 demonstrations of protests, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event data. Protests began in Minneapolis on May the 26th, 2020, the day after George Floyd, an African-American man, was killed during a police arrest. He died on June the 6th, and on June the 6th, an estimated 500,000 people joined protests in 550 places across the country. Protests lasted into the weekend of Juneteenth. As of July the 3rd, protests had continued throughout the entire month of June in many cities, with protests occurring in over 40% of the counties in the United States. Polls estimate between 15 million and 26 million people participated in the United States, making these protests the largest movement in terms of participation in U.S. history. The protests spread over 2,000 cities and towns in all 50 states and all 5 permanently inhabited territories, as well as in over 60 other countries. Many cities have been seeing continuous protests since George Floyd's death, including New York, which had seen 21 consecutive days of people continuously protesting as of June the 17th, 2020. According to all streams of media, protests are accompanied sometimes, not all the time, with violence, large-scale rioting, looting, and burning of businesses, along with police cars. Outside the United States, protests have occurred on behalf of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor in Auckland, Barcelona, Berlin, Brisbane, Madrid, Melbourne, Copenhagen, Dublin, Assyria, Lagos, Nairobi, and Nairobi. There are Cape Town, Paris, Rio de Janeiro, Sydney, Tel Aviv, Seoul, Tokyo, Vienna, and Athens. As of July 2020, protests have resulted in police reforms being proposed on the federal level and in jurisdictions in over 20 states. The protests have been associated with the removal of numerous monuments, statues, and controversial legacies. In response to this, Trump's administration deployed federal law enforcement to several cities across the country, and we all know how that turned out. There are several governors that asked Trump not to come. There are videos of federal officers illegally detaining citizens. There are videos of federal officers using undue force and violence. There are videos of federal officers going beyond what is appropriate, using mace and tear gas in Washington, D.C., resulting in the the street leading up to the White House being renamed as Black Lives Matter Avenue, I believe it's called. What does this mean? Well, when you talk about riot and civil commotion, and I think one of the biggest misunderstandings and a lack of attempt to understand that African Americans, whether they are North Americans or South Americans, we are the only people in history that were created by design. We were sent, captured, forced, sold from our native home, which makes us African. But there was a system of psychological, physical, and emotional abuse created in a design for the sheer purpose of creating an African American people that despised each other, distrusted each other, blamed each other, feared not only ourselves but those that did not look like us, and demoralized and demasculated the male of the household who should be there to provide, protect, and make provisions. The African American people, family, institutions were designed to be demoralizing and to maintain a mindset of slavery and captivity. This is who we were designed to be. However, who can make straight what has been made crooked? Hallelujah. There is always a plan. There is always someone, something who pushes back. And where we have gotten to in the timeline of our evolution into where God is taking us is the ultimate pushback. And I believe this shall continue, because 2020 in this nation in this time does mean clear vision, eyes wide open. You want to make a comment? Please call me at 443-380-2803. But we're talking about insurance. So how does this affect our insurance? Within a few days of George Floyd's passing, rioters caused damage to over 1,500 buildings in Minneapolis, specifically St. Paul. There have been across the country, as of July, 267 restaurants destroyed, 207 retail stores destroyed, 114 goods and services stores destroyed, 85 grocery stores destroyed, cell phone stores 76 destroyed and looted, gas stations 63 destroyed and looted, 60 auto body shops, 53 residents, 52 salons and barbershops, 47 healthcare facilities, and this is according to StarTribune.com. And also, and according to them, there is at least $1 billion in claims. The death of George Floyd is estimated to be the costliest in insurance history, according to FoxBusiness.com. The last time that a riot forced insurance companies to compile losses was in 2015, when the riots broke out in Baltimore about Freddie Gray, who died because of a neck injury while he was in police custody. However, these riots only totaled up to $25 million in damage. And as a result, we saw property insurance increase statewide, region-wide, So with over 4 times that amount at $1 billion in claims. What is covered? There is a coverage under your insurance plan, whether it's your homeowners, your renters, your business coverage. If you have property vacant or landlord, call riot and civil commotion. Now, if you have a vacant property, that coverage may not be on there because they like to exclude theft and vandalism because no one is there to monitor the property. But riot and civil commotion coverage is coverage that is enacted when there is a group of people basically out of control doing damage to anything they can. Normally, the side effects of riot and civil commotion is fire, theft, and vandalism. These things are automatically covered under a normal property policy. Again, if you have a vacant property, it may be excluded. However, what happens when an unexpected event cause losses to accelerate at a rate 2 times or 3 times or 4 times what was anticipated for that year? What happens? Rates go up. Rates go up universally because, as we talked about last week and the week before that, insurance is a pool. There are several different kinds of pools. Commercial, personal, but insurance is a pool. And the more money that comes out of the pool, the more money has to go back in to create reserves so that when the next catastrophe happens, there's enough money to cover it. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was shot in her home when officers were trying to conduct a no-knock warrant. They actually went to her home looking for someone who she was no longer associated with. Brett Haniskin was charged. Brett Hannick's son, which is one of the officers, was charged by a jury with 3 counts of wanton endangerment in the first degree on September 23rd. He was fired from the police department in June with the termination letter saying wantonly and blindly shot 10 times into Breonna Taylor's apartment. Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, now on administrative leave. A grand jury did not announce charges against him or the other officers, as it is still under investigation. However, there has been a settlement for over $12 million, I believe it's $14 million, for the estate of Breonna Taylor, which is the largest payout ever for a black female. And this is from the state, the area of Louisville, Kentucky. Now, the Louisville Metro government is pulling this money from 3 different sources. So let me show you how this works. $5 million will come from the Risk Management Fund. Now, the Risk Management Fund is designed to do a variety of things to protect the area from natural disasters, related lawsuits like this one, and injured employees. This is money, taxpayer money, that is set aside to create an emergency cushion when something unforeseen and devastating happens. $2 million is going to come from the Area Governmental Self-Insurance Trust, which is basically a fund, I believe, that all of the cities put in to self-insure. So this is their quote-unquote insurance plan. Okay, so $2 million is going to come out of that, and then $5 million is going to come from the excess carriers safety national insurance plan, which is basically an umbrella policy. Okay, so $7 million is coming from the insurance, $5 million is coming from taxpayers. The settlement with Breonna Taylor's family also includes police department reforms. So basically, they were not about just getting the money. They wanted to effect change. And Breonna Taylor's mother is very persistent on this. She wanted to effect reforms related to the tragic circumstances surrounding Breonna Taylor's death, as well as measures to improve the Louisville Police Department more broadly. Through Miss Taylor's death, partially tied to specific kinds of warrants, the department has agreed for more oversight on warrants in general, using commanding officers and a civilian review committee. The department will also implement a system to identify officers who repeatedly violate standards, a system that might have flagged one of the officers involved in her killing. Now, we're seeing this across the board, because one of the things in the past where those who dress blue protect one another, when there is a complaint or situation involving an officer, it's kept quiet instead of allowing others to be made aware of it. And really, honestly, this system is really to protect those officers, to keep them out of scenarios in which they are going to make bad decisions, in which they need more training to make good decisions. And these are systems that are actually being implemented in many states, in many cities across this country as a result of what has happened. A lot of people think that from the riots, FEMA should have got involved. But unfortunately, in the history of FEMA, they've only been involved in one riot, and that was the 1992 riots in Los Angeles from, what's the guy's name? Can We All Just Get Along? And that was George W. Bush, who sent FEMA there with disaster recovery funds of $638 million. In 2015, Baltimore asked FEMA to come and help them with the riots that were caused after Freddie Gray's death. And the request was denied, because that riot and civil commotion is not really considered a natural disaster, which is what FEMA was created for. FEMA was also requested to come to Kentucky as well as Minnesota, and they have also been denied. So what is Trump doing? He says he's praying for the 2 officers that got shot and was wounded in the protests that emerged after the grand jury brought back no charges in the Louisville police officer's fatal shooting. Praying for the 2 officers who were shot, but yet he has yet to say Breonna Taylor's name. At a news conference in the White House, he recited a statement by the Kentucky Attorney General in which he is encouraging officers to live in the community and take part in community service. Also, he is not interested in putting measures in place regarding accountability, and is upset about any settlements that have been paid because he believes it sends the wrong message. When Louisville Metro government is sued and settles with plaintiffs, as it did in Breonna Taylor's case, it is setting up additional fund designed to cover the city in unexpected situations. So that is something that has come out of this. Well, what did Joe Biden say? Joe Biden has said that Americans must continue to speak Breonna Taylor's name. Following the decision by the Louisville, Kentucky grand jury not to indict any of the officers on homicide charges involved in her March 13th shooting death. Biden urges protesters to be peaceful and patient as they await the results of ongoing federal investigations. It's not over. He told reporters that violent protests threaten to sully Breonna Taylor's memory. Violence can never be the answer, Joe Biden tweeted. Those who engage will be held accountable. Gotta go vote if you wanted to be held accountable. Biden said policing reform remains necessary, including addressing the issue of excessive force, banning chokeholds, overhauling no-knock warrants. We must continue to speak Breonna Taylor's name, support her family, and never give in on ensuing the full promise of the American dream. This is what Biden has said. It's basically what Kennedy said. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And what you can do is go out and vote. There are serious issues. Serious issues. And I talk about how it affects insurance. Yeah, the riots, the natural disasters, healthcare. All of these are issues that take money out of your pocket and limit protections and coverages that you should have. That's why if there is anybody out there who thinks that this is not the year to get something done, you are wrong. Whether you vote for Trump, whether you vote for Biden, vote. The last election, I have to say, I voted for the national and statewide areas. Locally, I wrote all my family names in. I wrote my father's name in to be a judge in Carroll County. You have that option. But you must be counted. You must be counted. There are issues regarding our identity and how we progress as one people, not just as black people, not just as Latinos or natives or Asians, as one people, because the American people are many shades and colors. Financially, we depend on one another, which is why the entire time I was out for COVID, at least one day a week, I tried to order something from somebody's restaurant, whether I had the money or not, because we affect our economy. We decide the protocols and the provisions that affect our economy. We do it every 2 to 4 years by showing up at the ballot box. I want to thank you so much for being with me today. I am your insurance guru, and I know we are covering some heavy topics. But I am still here to talk about all things insurance, and you can always call me during the week at 443-660-7131, and I appreciate you being here with me today. Have a wonderful Saturday. See you next week.